Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Rob Spence, and he is not a neural implant researcher, but he is actually a cyborg, one of a few now that we've had on the show. And this episode is also done with video because now our recording software can do video. Yay! So you can hop on YouTube and see what it looks like. He has an eye patch, and basically, in that eye socket, he was able to put a bionic eye, a camera, and so he is a cyborg. So really cool stuff. Not a lot of science and technology in this one, but it's still a fun episode nonetheless. Enjoy. Rob Spence, pleasure to have you on the show. This is really cool, actually. We are unveiling this new feature that Zencastr has, which is basically, our podcast recording platform, and now has video. Before, it used to only have audio, and we're unveiling it. And those of you who are watching now see that Rob Spence has an eye patch. What's going on here? This is the Neural Implant Podcast, and I don't think we've ever had a person with an eye patch on the show. So do you want to explain the eye patch a little bit?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was 9 years old. I was visiting my grandparents in Ireland. My parents are from near Belfast. And he was trying to show me how to use a shotgun. I was 9 years old, but I was too quick. I was too rambunctious. And he was like, "Wait, Robbie, wait." And I'm like, blam. I wanted to shoot this pile of cow shit, which I did. I got the cow shit, but you're supposed to put the stock, here, not, out and through and behind your arm so that it slides. So when I shot the gun itself slammed into my eye and kind of split it like a grape. After that, I was legally blind, and it took till I was around 30 years old and a bunch of operations, but the doctors were like, you should probably just get your eye removed because it had gone completely black in terms of vision. There's no more vision, and it started getting really white, kind of like Le Chiffre from Casino Royale, that James Bond movie. And so, I got it out, and but by that time I had become a filmmaker, and I decided to do a whole bunch of things, but one of them was to just start wearing an eye patch because I did get a prosthetic eye, but the issue with the prosthetic eye is that they look very real. It's quite convincingly looks like you have an eye, but you're never quite looking the right direction. You have a little bit of lazy eye thing going on. Those people you talk to, it's like, are they looking at me? Or you have to pick one of the eyes to look at. And because I just, there's sort of a tradition of filmmakers wearing eye patches. John Hughes
Really?
is one of them. Yeah. It's sort of, dashing, rugged, filmmakery. So I went with that.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, I think it makes you look like a pirate or something like this, or just like a badass, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you not only wore the eye patch, but then you decided to do something with it. Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
With the eye patch?
Sorry, with the eye socket, I guess is
eye socket, right?
Yeah.
So what I did, because I was a filmmaker by the time they told me to get it removed, I thought I would get a prosthetic eye with a video camera inside the prosthetic. And I remember at the time I had one of those old Nokias, the little clamshell, the ones that you
flip phone. Yeah.
And I was just looking at that, not long after they'd said, yeah, you should get the eye out. And I was like, okay. And I was looking at the Nokia, and I was like, I think I want to try to get an eye camera in there, because the other thing, and unless you're a little older, you wouldn't know this, but I was obsessed with a TV show when I was a kid called The $6 Million Man. or also known as the Bionic Man, and he was a cyborg. And one of his cyborg bits, besides his arm and his fast legs and stuff, was this crazy bionic eye that he had. He had one bionic eye, and I thought, well, shit, I just want to be like that guy. I'm gonna make a few calls, and by then I'd also become a documentary maker, so I was used to like cold calling people for research purposes and stuff, and I was able to find people that were able to help me with that.
Wow, that's really cool. Because I mean, I'm assuming this. I haven't heard of this before. Like turning a eyeball, right, and basically the shape of an eye and size of an eye into a camera. But I also, like you said, I mean, it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard. I mean, the camera in a Nokia or something like this, it should fit. Battery should fit. Electronics and everything like this. But at the same time, you have to get that like prototyped, I guess, right? And I'm assuming you had somebody help you and maybe have it sent out to China or something like this. It also sounds a bit expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was really fortunate in that, I ended up with like a kind of a team of really smart guys, engineers, that the main guts of the thing was finding a video camera that would be small enough. But then we also thought, well, what we'd like to do is have it transmit a video signal wirelessly to a receiver. We did look at the possibility of recording to like, an SD card or whatever, and then you check the footage out later. But the you kind of want to, oddly enough, you kind of want to see what you're seeing. And then one of the odd things that happened when we first got the eye camera working was I was looking at the receiver, the video receiver. So I got video feedback, and I was like, ugh, like, because you don't want to. It's one thing if you point a video camera at a TV to get that sort of twirling feedback that you get, but when you're looking at it yourself, it sort of threw me off actually. With your own eye, I guess.
I bet that'd be confusing.
Yeah.
So, are you the first person to have done this, or do you know about other people have done? And then why don't more people do this? I mean, this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds
Well,
great.
honestly, and I get a lot of flack for this. People are, why don't you just put a GoPro on your head? You're right. It would be a better picture. You win, Reddit. You know, um, to me, it's just kind of like it's not a static thing. Like I try to get the guys together every 2 or 3 years to do an upgrade. I'm sort of harassing them right now. I do it by, sometimes there'll be a TV show who has some budget, and then I'll go on the TV show as like they'll do a little documentary bit about me, like for Showcase. A while ago, I was on one of those shows, Darknet, it was called. And so then it becomes this thing, like get the guys together. There's a little bit of money to put it together. We try to improve the eye. It's more like a really interesting hobby for a one-eyed filmmaker that happens to get a lot of press, and it generates a lot of discussion. So it's almost like it's art, as opposed to a really useful secret camera. Like by the way, I have two eye cameras. One is very realistic looking eye, although it's a little bit larger than it should be. So I look a little bit like Marty Feldman, and you'll have to Google who that is, but he is an actor that used to have one eye larger than the other. And then the other eye has got a red LED light in it, but we didn't quite get the connection super solid. So sometimes I have to whack my head to get the LED light to come on. And so, nobody does it because it actually is difficult. It's quite a bit of work, and everyone's eye socket is a very unique shape. What a lot of people don't know is that everyone imagines that a fake eye is like a big ball, like a sphere. But actually what happens generally when you get an eye out now is that they put in a ball of sea coral. And then the the fake eye is shaped a lot like a very thick contact lens. In
Hmm.
my case, they even drilled in a metal cylinder with a tiny pin with kind of a half ball bearing head. It's called a motility uh, coupler pin. And then the back of the eye has an indentation so that when I put the eye in, whether it's a camera eye or a regular prosthetic eye, which I also have. So it's almost like those when you're wearing those cowboy shirts, tick, the little buttons that,
Hmm.
and that seems like, well, why do they do all this stuff with the motility coupling and the sea coral? So what happens is you remove the eye or what's left of it, the sea coral goes in, the blood vessels and muscles grow into that sea coral, and then after a few months, you've got this sea coral that moves in tandem with the muscles of your remaining healthy eye. So once you put the eye in, then you get, they call it drag. So that, one eye doesn't go this way and then this one stays right here. So you don't look that wacky. What you want is the eyes to move with in stereo, if you will. So that's all to get you to look more normal.
Interesting.
What's nice for me is when I get drag on the camera. So the video footage I get, there's lots of blinking and glancing. So it's actually like, in terms of, because I make films, it's not great footage. It's really weird. I liken it to, writing that stream of consciousness, kind of like James Joyce stuff. It's sort of like almost unreadable. Like you're like, because the way that you think is not necessarily very nice writing. And this is the way that we actually look at things. Like we don't look at things as a perfect drone coming into New York City and then switch around. Like we look at stuff in a herky-jerky way at the world.
Has it ever gotten you in trouble, like looking at some breasts or something like this, or
Yes.
That's funny.
Yeah,
Has
because you're like, I mean, this is International Women's Day, but yes, it does happen that men look at boobs and we should all try a little harder not to objectify women, but you have to watch where you're looking. It's the evidence is there, so there's no sneaking cheeky glances becomes more tricky.
That's crazy. So have you ever used this in your documentary career, or is it just kind of like an extra thing that you
Yeah,
get pulled into a documentary for?
yeah. I mean, I tend to cut to it as some kind of something to cut to. It's like, oh, like I did a little doc for a video game company, and they were called Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and their main character was a cyborg, and that's what the story was about. Is in the future, what is human rights, cybernetics? What's it all mean? Pretty well written video game, and they gave me pretty much free reign to go around the world interviewing different cyborgs about here's what's happening to arms, here's what's happening to legs, here's my own eye. And then I interviewed another person that was like quite blind, and they have like the more legit kind of bionic eye that was like actually restoring vision, not like a one-eyed filmmaker kind of toy that I have. But it's still interesting, and it's the footage is strange and cool from a filmmaking point of view. More often than not, I end up on the other side of the camera as some sort of cybernetic bearded lady of sorts. A bit of a. I'm sort of. I have the. I don't really focus too much on this, but I have this side hustle as sort of like a freak entertainer of sorts, I guess. And it's interesting, since I made that film some years ago with Cyborgs, almost every other commercial has like a guy with prosthetic legs in it or arms. I have friends that are some of them are doing pretty well. I mean, they're not like my best pals or anything, but like I know other cyborgs, and they're starting to, be a little cooler now, and they're getting work like cyborg models. They're they're in commercials. They're selling earphones. It's like this weird side hustle now,
That's crazy.
right? Yeah,
That's really cool.
I
Yeah, I
like
mean,
it.
I would think that more people would want to do that. I mean, obviously, there's companies that make the prosthetic eyes. So have you talked to them and be like, hey, I have this potential, these devices, not off the shelf, but like, we could make some more. And I'm sure there's maybe hundreds or thousands of people that might be interested in something like this. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting. I am kind of pursuing that, but the way that prosthetic eyes are made is very custom. It's by somebody called an ocularist, and in a lot of ways, it hasn't changed for a couple hundred years. I don't even know. Just it's an old art form though. Used to be glass. Now there's like plastic and stuff they use, but it's if there's an opportunity, I mean, one of the challenges for us is whenever we make an eye camera, some bits are manufactured and repeatable, like the little circuit board that we designed, but the shell itself is I've only been using ones that are handmade, and so these are that you do a hot wax and not too hot impression of the eye socket that gives you a reverse cast. Then they keep adding and building on it, polishing. And an ocularist will also paint. They'll look at your remaining eye and paint and use little bits of red thread to create this facsimile of your remaining eye. And they're artists, and they're good at it. And it's a little bit of medical this and a little bit of art that. They do not want to change because this is an old custom skill. But what I kind of need, especially because we're looking at doing an HD camera now that has a little bit more digital action. And the one I have now is 320 by 240, which is quite small video, and it's analog wireless RF video, which, by the way, kind of looks like the same quality of video as Princess Leia asking Obi-Wan for help, because there's RF dropouts and stuff, so it's sort of apropos. But what
Why
we
is it
need,
so bad?
pardon?
Why is it so bad? I mean, that's like, man, if you were talking about webcams and stuff like this, that's like worse than the Nokia, like that's like from
Yeah,
15 years ago.
yeah, because there's power issues, and getting it wireless is an issue. And I don't actually have like a big sphere of space. I have like this tiny amount of space in there. Um, so it's also just like the lens barrel can't be very big, but we're just about to up the resolution. But what would help is if we had a 3D printed prosthetic eye that you can design the electronics in the software, down to the micron or whatever, sub-millimeter stuff. And because I've been working on that solution, I also realized, well, if I'm able to get that going, like some sort of 3D printed, reasonable kind of prosthetic eye for myself, then that might be repeatable in parts of the world where people can't afford an ocularist. And that's where the opportunity is for that kind, because 3D printing has revolutionized prosthetic arms, legs. There's lots of, it's brought down the cost, increased the ability to design things. People have started getting more into it artistically. So there's that opportunity there that I'd like to explore in the prosthetic eye world, but it would have to be, ocularists in North America and Europe are not very interested.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, I think that could be, a big, a big market, especially. Okay, so right now the quality is pretty low, and I had seen some articles saying like, oh, we could look at infrared or UV, so you could go beyond what is possible with humans. Have you looked at that too? I mean, would that be more difficult? And do you think that might get more people on board as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if adding, we have all kinds of, conversations about adding ridiculously cool, wacky technology like infrared eye. We have blueprints for a laser eye, you know? Um, is that useful? Like, well, if I'm doing a speaking, I can go, as you can see here, you know, but then the problem is you'd have to turn it off before you face the audience again because you're going to shoot somebody's retina with your stupid laser. But then, the way I actually turn this any tech that I have in there on and off is with a magnet, because there's something called a reed switch that can be an on off. So I tap the eye with a magnet and that turns it off. But all these technologies, it's more like it's it's more artistic or kind of like wacky tech crunch stuff for my particular thing because quite honestly, like you'd be better off getting Google glasses to do all this tech. Uh, you know, easier to connect it to your phone, higher quality video. You're just working with this, and everything you do, it's like imagine like a wireless microphone. They put them on anybody who's in a documentary or on a reality show or somebody doing yoga. It's a little pack. But like instead of the wireless signal being free to go through the air, imagine putting the transmitter inside an Irish ham. Because that's what we're doing every time I put this video camera in there. So it's just got its challenges. But we are looking at doing a more HD digital camera right now instead of 320 240 analog.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
cool. So right now it's just kind of like free floating in your eye socket, and connected to everything in there. Have you thought about connecting it to the optic nerve, or talked about there's companies that do this?
Yeah.
Have you considered this?
Yeah. Well, it's a hobby of my like cybernetics. I keep up on it. And that's a question that everyone asks me is like, is your camera connected to your brain? And in my case, that would be a terrible idea, at least now, because I have really good vision out of one eye. Um, and if I were to cross optic nerve that with a shitty video camera, even if I were able to translate video to, retina, visual cortex language, then I would sort of be overlaying a bunch of crap over pretty good vision. Now, having said that, if you're completely blind, then it is worth having, you know, even a shitty version of the world that you perceive, like, oh, that looks like maybe a Mack truck is heading over here. I should go over here. Like that's very useful potentially. And there's really interesting research going on there. For example, they're doing rather than a bionic eye, there's a lot of research going into bionic retinas. So by that I mean that there's actually a language that the visual cortex understands, that light goes through your eye, the retina translates it into brain talk or electrical signals that the visual cortex then is able to say, that is vision. I perceive this to be light bouncing off things and shapes. So and what's really interesting about that is if you think about vision, you don't need eyes to see. In fact, because you can see at night when you're dreaming. And they always say, in fact, it's more vivid or it's better than, it's technicolor, they say, when you're dreaming. And so that's the proof positive that you don't need eyes to see. But what you do need is you need that those electrical signals to go to your visual cortex somehow. so they've started translating the code. They've started decoding what those signals are, and that's where and they're having some success with that. It's still in the early days, but and that makes it really weird and interesting that if you like in the future when maybe you're like, fuck it, I want bionic eyes, I want to decode and get all the amazing stuff, whether it's, a chip or glasses or whatever. But then you like, if a big company is in charge or has the code of your actual visual perception, then that's a really interesting, weird corporatization of perception.
Yeah, they might even offer it for free,
Yeah,
just to keep the footage and everything like this, and be like, oh, it's market analysis, or we
yeah,
want to see what cereal boxes you look at the most, and then that's sent
yeah,
off to Walmart to crunch the numbers or something like this. So it could get pretty ugly. Yeah, you're right.
yeah. And then it turns into like really weird conversations, like reality itself, because if you start getting all your perception um, mediated by like gear made by Google or whoever, then which there's a strong possibility people will do that at some point in the not too distant future. Then
Yeah,
yeah, then it sort of then it was like, well, what is your perception of things?
yeah, for sure.
Who's in charge of that?
So for now, you're not interested, even just because you don't want to downgrade your vision. You wouldn't be interested in having it connected, or even having it, I don't know, extra, or maybe you could have it one eye be ultraviolet, one eye normal, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm more likely than the average person to adopt some cyborg technology. Like I demonstrated that, but at the same time, you want to be a little bit careful. I actually wear a contact lens, and there's a bonus there, which is I get 50% off on all contact lenses. But also, like, somebody was like, "Well, why don't you just get laser? Like, so you don't need a contact lens?" And I'm like, I don't think so. You know,
Hmm.
because you know, just that doesn't feel like a great idea.
You're still risk averse. You're not necessarily going to be cutting off your legs or something like this to have bionic legs or something, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
you're pretty good for the bionic stuff for now, right?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting like a chip in my hand or whatever. Like, I know people that do that kind of stuff. Um, and like all the Google glasses and stuff, I think is interesting. It's interesting. There was these guys. You remember these guys that were running around for a while? They were called. They were anti-Google glasses, and they called it the glass hole movement. And for some reason, they wanted me to be their poster boy. And I was like, I'm not sure that makes sense for me to be the glass hole guy because I kind of am a glass hole, I guess, according to your own criticisms. But to me, that was interesting. And there was a huge, and I get that kind of backlash off people. Like, sometimes people are like, you're the worst. Like, you're ruining privacy. Your ideas are awful, and you're wrecking privacy for all of humanity and stuff. And I'm like, so there's this sort of competing thing where it's like, dude, I lost my eye. I'm trying to get something back here and have some fun as a filmmaker. I'm not trying to take anything away from you, but by me putting a video camera in there, that's really offending them because I'm taking their privacy. So it creates this sort of interesting, talking point actually. So that when I do public speaking, I'll discuss this competing. Do I have the right to change my body? Yes, but then they're like, but not if you're videotaping me with my mistress at the bar. Okay, because you just trampled on my rights now. So there's this sort of competing issue there. And
It's very strange.
yeah,
I mean, I guess it reminds you of the Black Mirror episode where they have the contact lenses and they can rewind and records everything. So you're the living version of that. You're the beta or the
well,
alpha
actually, I
version.
think in Black Mirror they weren't wearing contact lenses. That was a part of their body.
Hmm.
And I, obviously I was very interested in that episode. Uh, and I think that's because once they decode vision properly, there's no reason why you can't just record that all the time.
Yeah,
It's just data. Yeah.
and have some
And
kind of
once they
wireless
have like
power.
20G, you know, or whatever, that's just going to be kicking around. I mean, you could probably like tune into somebody else's, what they're seeing, or,
A real live
it
stream.
all becomes, it starts to like kind of mess with your head if you think about it too much, because um, what I think in general though is there'll just be like less and less privacy, and that's not my fault. I just, have a hole in my head. I wanted to put a cool camera in there. I'm not trying to say that it's the right path, for us to all to film everything all the time. I'm not that guy, but that's kind of where I'm at, a little bit. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Rob Spence, I think this is a great place to end it. You're just a guy with a hole in his head and you wanted to fill it, with something cool.
Yeah.
So I think
Right.
that's great. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Yeah. I like your interviewing style, man. Very, very chill. Good questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.